Have you ever felt, as a writer, have you ever felt seized by procrastination and indecision? This happens to writers sometimes. They feel like they don't know how to go forward. They don't know what to do. They don't feel like they have enough to say, and they procrastinate or they're indecisive. Maybe they just don't want to do the hard work and the concentration and focus that's necessary, because it takes some discipline, and so that can be an issue too. One example of in history of a person who had a similar situation was the King Richard II of England. This is actually Shakespeare. Shakespeare dramatizes his situation in his play Richard II. Now, Richard II was a very eccentric character who was very vainglorious and self-centered, and very thoughtless person who didn't worry about much other than his own pleasure and his own needs. As a result, he did bad things to other people, and he created enemies as he went along. He didn't take advice from anybody, and he just pursued his own gratification. As a result, when he went abroad, he left behind a somewhat cracked country, a weakened state of affairs where he was vulnerable. His leadership was vulnerable because he had made a lot of enemies. And so Henry returns and seizes control, and then Richard returns and is taken prisoner. Now, Richard is faced, perhaps for the first time, he's never been in this kind of situation. Here he is facing adversity. He is, rather than having the entire world bowing down to him, he suddenly finds himself a prisoner. And so how does this great man respond? He responds by whining. He is a very eloquent, philosophical, poetical, a real wordsmith. This guy could whine and philosophize about his own downfall like no one else. It's a beautiful thing to listen to, just to listen to Henry II philosophize about his own pathetic downfall. And it makes for great drama. It's quite entertaining. However, in real life, many people follow a similar path, maybe not with the eloquence of Richard II, but that they respond in a similar way. Maybe they get depressed, they whine and complain, they feel helpless or like a victim, and none of these things really are going to help us if our problem is indecision and procrastination. We need just the opposite. We need to get into action, not focusing on our own misery. And so, in contrast to Richard II, you look at General Patton in World War II and how he responded to his adversity. Now, he was a general, and however, he wasn't just any general. He was an exceptional general. General Patton had been preparing for adversity for years and years, and he was self-motivated individual. He didn't just do what he was told. He went way beyond that. So he had been preparing himself for adversity for years and years. And so when the time came, all he needed was an inciting incident, and that was Adolf Hitler, which came. And then at this point, General Patton was prepared to take action on a grand scale, and he was prepared to go well beyond the expectations that a normal general would have had. And he was able to do this with decisiveness because of his years of preparation. He knew what was needed for victory, and so he was highly motivated to do that. So preparation is important for writers as well. Many times writers can freeze up. It can happen to writers because they're facing a blank page and they feel kind of blank and they don't know how to go forward. So many times what's needed is preparation. Writers need to spend the time in preparation. They need to spend the time brainstorming. researching many sources, skimming many books, taking many notes, and then creating basically a chaos of ideas, of information that they've gathered, which creates chaos. And by the way, chaos does not necessarily help with procrastination. It could actually increase it. Because suddenly, okay, now it was bad enough having a blank page. Now I've got 100 random ideas. What am I supposed to do with that? That's called chaos, and you don't know what to do with it because it's just a mess. However, that's just because we're at one step in the process. Once we've created chaos, we have to take the next step, which is bringing order out of it, which is essentially narrowing the focus. We need to go through all these ideas we come up with in the brainstorming and creativity process and narrow it down to one key idea, one thing, one simple idea that we're going to go forward with, which is the best of the best. What's the one idea that's surprising and exciting that we're excited about, that's going to be something new and fresh in our genre and surprise our readers, something we're excited about. And we throw everything else out, or at least put it aside. And then we've got something to go with. We've got an idea. And then at that point, we're not ready to go yet. That's just an idea. You can't work. Well, you can, but many writers would rather not go. Some writers will just go ahead and sort of wing it from that point. And that's fine if that's your style. But others would rather think it through and use that one idea as a starting point from which to do a whole new brainstorm, essentially, and then eventually arrive at a very narrow, focused, and simplified outline that they can work through and use as their guide, as essentially a guide to move forward. And so preparation, if you've gone through all of that, preparation leads to confidence, because now I not only have an outline, but I've probably edited it several times. I've gotten rid of the repetition. I've gotten rid of the weak points. I've got to a point where I now have an outline that's focused and it's strong and it's organized in a logical manner and it's simple. It's simple. It hits on strong key points. Now I'm going to feel confident, and I'm not going to feel the desire to procrastinate. At this point, I'm feeling like I'm prepared. I feel like I can go forward. I'm ready to do something. I'm ready to take action. So preparation. Now, writers should also think long term. We've got to think ahead. Many highly motivated writers they've eventually broken down. They've broken down to the demands of relentless production. I'm talking professional writers who for years just put out a grinding, relentless, prodigious, almost superhuman production of writing. But usually there's just never enough production for these writers. The demands of the marketplace, they devour their content quickly, and there's always more is needed. And at some point, these writers have broken down. And the reason why this sometimes happens is because they haven't thought long term. They're just thinking about tomorrow and survival. And so they are always really reacting to their own desperation. So for professional writers, I once heard John Grisham recommend, don't put yourself in that kind of pressure. For example, Grisham himself became a lawyer first, and he was a lawyer, and he was writing on the side. Therefore, he wasn't desperate. He wasn't entirely dependent on writing. It's the old cliche, don't quit your day job yet. Well, that's essentially what I heard Grisham recommend one time is, get yourself a real job and then write on the side. And eventually, when his book became a bestseller, his book, The Firm, became a national bestseller. At that point, he was in a position to become a full-time writer, and he wasn't he wasn't financially desperate to the point where he was making bad decisions, putting out bad content, putting himself in a bad position. So thinking long term as a student, for example, could be just thinking ahead. I don't want to wait until the end of the week to get that assignment done. I want to get it done early. I want to get that outline done on day one. and get that written on day 2. That way I can do the necessary revision, and revision will almost certainly be necessary. You've got to leave your time, because one of the keys to motivation, to self-motivation, sometimes writers, even when they're well prepared, it's like, yeah, but am I up to the challenge? Am I really gonna, sure, I know what to write, but I don't know if I can do that great of a job. I don't know if I can really produce something beautiful. And the answer usually is no, you can't. I mean, maybe there are some who can, but for most writers, a first draft is, as Hemingway said, he used a 4-letter word to describe first drafts. Okay, so we need to think ahead. And one of the things that can avoid procrastination is to just lower the standards. I personally will give myself permission to write badly. I'll just say I give myself permission to write junk. All right, hopefully we rise above that later. But the reason I do that is, as a writer, I want to lower the pressure. I know I can succeed in writing something bad, but I also know I can go back later and improve it over and over and over until it's something I'm excited about. So, but I also find that when I give myself permission to write badly and to just fast write with no expectations of quality, then what happens is all the pressure just goes away, and it's like, it's a relief. It's a relief, and suddenly I'm no longer feeling that writer's block, the indecision, the procrastination. Now I can actually just write and write and write, and some of it is bad and has to be thrown away, and some of it turns out to be better than expected, and we can even improve it further through subsequent drafts later on. So writers really need a couple of things. They need motivation and balance. Okay, motivation. We need to know why we're doing it, and we need to just be aware of that and how important it is to our long-term plan. And then in terms of balance, a great way to deal with balance is through small chunks. We don't need to accomplish something all at once. Slice and dice it into smaller chunks and hit it that way. Hit it in smaller chunks, maybe 15 minutes at a time, and attack those 15 minutes with intensity and get it done that way. And suddenly what can happen is, what I thought was going to be so daunting and intimidating, it becomes almost effortless. It becomes basically like fun. It's a piece of cake. So there you go. Banish indecision, procrastination. Defeat them. Fight on and write on.